The U.S. Secretary of State has a spokesman. His name is Ned Price, this fellow right here. And he got a lot of questions about the balloon from China. The media wants to know if the U.S. overreacted because the Chinese are pretty upset about this. They've said that they are reserving the right to react, and there may be a whole lot more coming from them. We'll have to wait and see. But the media has questions for Ned. If you don't remember Ned, we do check in with him from time to time. He is the State Department spokesperson. He went to Harvard, all right? So we're all going to have to, put on our Harvard caps or whatever. And he's also ex-CIA. All right. So that's perfect role for this guy to be explaining and interfacing with the rest of the world for us. Let's see what he has to say about all of this. The media asks our friend Ned, sir, the Chinese said that you in America overreacted to them violating your airspace. What do you say about that?
Your reaction to critics saying that the United States overreacted due to domestic political pressure, since this incident happened, a similar incident happened before, and given the fact Secretary Blinken is going to be the first secretary to visit China in 4 years, and maybe potentially meet President Xi Jinping.
We had an opportunity. We had what would have been a valuable opportunity to engage in that face-to-face diplomacy. It was.
So the question was hard to hear because she still has her mask on. But the question was about what happened with the trip. Okay, Blinken was going to go over there. It was going to be this big first historic trip. No, secretaries of state don't go over there often, so it's kind of a big deal. They were going to piggyback off of a prior meeting between Biden and Xi at some other event that they were just at where Joe Biden was being carted from room to room. So now that this balloon, it's just a balloon, man. It's just a balloon. You're going to let this derail these two great powers from coordinating together?
Opportunity. We had what would have been a valuable opportunity to engage in that face-to-face diplomacy. It was to have been a near-term diplomacy. Of course, the blame does not fall to us for undermining that opportunity. It falls to the PRC for engaging what was ultimately an inappropriate, irresponsible, or unacceptable act.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're not to blame here, right? He said the blame goes to China, which is obvious. It's nice to hear the government say it.
We've acted responsibly. We've acted practically. We've acted prudently in this case, but also in the broader context of the bilateral relationship. We think it's important that we have these lines of communication so that we can make very clear to the PRC what we're doing and why we're doing it. Unfortunately, they decided to undertake this action in the days leading up to Secretary Blinken's travel. That completely undermined the point of the trip and left us with, unfortunately, no option but to postpone it.
A good answer there from Ned. Nicely done there. I wonder what class they taught that at Harvard. But it's a very good answer. Finally, he's saying, hey, they screwed it up, not us. And you have to imagine they did it exactly timed with this, right? I mean, the timing is not a coincidence. They said, all right, how long is it going to take for our balloon to leave mainland China, fly up over the poles through Alaska and back down through Canada to the United States? About 10 days? Perfect. When's Blinken coming over here? All right, why don't you schedule it to release that day? And boom, they were almost, exact, right? So Ned tells the media, and you can see he's sort of frustrated as he is. He's sort of, probably very frustrated because they work hard to schedule these meetings and they were going, this is their job as the State Department is to go have these meetings. They're all on a plane. Ned already packed his bag, right? He's probably a checked baggage guy, maybe 2 bags. I don't know. But he's loading them up. And then Blinken's like, God, Ned, you're never going to believe it. We got to cancel this trip. What? You're kidding me. Yeah, the balloon thing. It's just too hot right now. Millie said they're going to shoot it down on Saturday after it gobbles up everything. So Ned's like, oh, gosh, I got to unpack everything. Ugh. So they're frustrated. They don't want to have to do all this over again. And the media wants to know why they allowed this thing to spiral out of control. So the next clip is also from Ned, and the media asks him again. This theme kept percolating throughout this briefing. The media wonders, maybe the media just turned this into a big circus. Maybe it really isn't that important, and this is much ado about nothing. Would you agree with that, Ned?
One, just on what my colleague just used the term overreacted with regard to China.
Overreaction
Is
to China flying a spy balloon into your nation. Just a simple overreaction for shooting
how
it down.
much truth do you think it is in if you say that the U.S. overreacted with just President Biden being pressured from like the U.S. media a little too much, and
Good for Ned.
there
Look at
is
his
not
facial
much truth
reactions.
into the surveillance equipment terminology there, and that it was just some media people who didn't want President Biden and China to get a little bit closer. You know, they were not interested in Blinken's visit, and is there any truth to that, you think, or no? There
Ridiculous
was some surveillance
question.
equipment found in the balloons as well.
So a couple things.
So the question was, aren't you guys just kind of overreacting over this? The media was pressuring Joe Biden. They were kind of, elevating this because they didn't want Blinken to go over there and have this meeting with China. It's a bunch of anti-Chinese, anti-U.S. normalized relations people who were inserting themselves into this debate. And Ned was scoffing the whole time.
Things there. First, it is a fundamental misunderstanding of the United States to suggest that we take these sort of actions based on anything other than what's in our national interest. This was a decision that the president made in close consultation with the Secretary of State, with the National Security Advisor, with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with the Secretary of Defense as well. And ultimately, the course of action was one that was put forward and executed by the Department of Defense. When it comes to what we've heard from the PRC, I'm just not going to give that too much oxygen. Let me see if I can state it as clearly as I can. The PRC knows precisely what this was. The PRC knows precisely why this was in our airspace. The PRC knows precisely what this was doing over the United States. And ultimately, the PRC knows precisely why we did what we did.
Nice.
The Secretary made the point on Friday that if the shoe were on the other foot, if something analogous were to have happened within PRC airspace, you can only imagine the response from Beijing.
Totally.
We've been
They blow it out of the sky and invade
clear,
Taiwan.
we have been resolute, but we've also been practical as well. And we have taken practical steps since the time this high-altitude surveillance balloon was detected to mitigate its ability to collect intelligence against sensitive sites, to
Now that's another debate that we'll come back to.
mitigate any threat it could pose to the American people. But more than that, in a way, we flipped the script because we've trained quite a bit of capabilities of our own at this high-altitude surveillance balloon while it was violating our airspace. We learned quite a bit about it and the practice in general. The technology.
Oh no. Okay. I liked it. I was very happy with this until we got to this.
That was on board. And as you've heard, I think just recently from my colleagues.
Actually, we're really happy they sent over this spy balloon, by the way. We learned a ton about it. We had 100 people working on this day and night, studying this thing. So how about that, China? We got the upper hand. Why don't you send us some more spy balloons?
At the Department of Defense, there is an active effort underway to recover what is left of this high-altitude surveillance balloon on the surface of the ocean.
Yeah, that you guys hit in the payload with your Sidewinder missile that exploded the whole deliverable of the entire balloon. Over water, perfect. So outstanding job.
And in the coming days, there will be an effort to collect what we can from the bottom of the ocean.
There's from the bottom of the ocean. That's great. They nuked the whole thing. So we'll probably never know what's on there, which is probably exactly what they want. They don't want anybody to know what's actually on that thing. And, it's just hilarious. All right. So I didn't know that was something they taught at Harvard, which is when you get spied on and totally embarrassed by a foreign adversary, one public relations strategy is to just say, I like to be embarrassed, actually. Why don't you embarrass me harder? Yeah, spy on me harder, baby. Yeah, send more over, some more balloons. Wow, that's really great. So there you go. Ed is delivering you a very expensive education from our friends at Harvard. All right. So here is another clip from Ned, and they're asking now about whether they notified China that they took out their spy balloon. Of course, because China had the spy balloon, which was beaming, presumably everything that it could see, back over to Beijing. So when the missile was coming towards the balloon, they could probably see that the balloon got exploded because they weren't getting an active video feed anymore from the missile silos, right? So in this case, the media wants to know is, after you guys exploded that weather spy balloon, did you call China and tell them that you did that?
Conversations since the Secretary spoke with Wang Yi on Friday have not revolved around or touched on a rescheduling of the trip. What have they touched on? I mean, I'm presuming that on Saturday, if there were conversations, that they would have been about the shoot down of the balloon. Is that correct? Or
So it is true that we notified.
yesterday?
It is true that we notified the PRC after the fact of the action that the U.S.
They saw it on TV.
After they saw it on TV.
They were watching, as were many of us. That was conveyed
They were watching the TV. You're not going to call them and tell them, hey, we're going to take out your spy satellite now. You ready for it?
to them on Saturday. But in a sense, it shouldn't have come to as a surprise to our PRC interlocutors. As you know,
Well, what else other than the balloon being shot down? What else did these conversations go over?
I'm not going to get into the conversations in any detail, but precisely what we said publicly is what we've conveyed privately as well. This was inappropriate. It was irresponsible.
But
It was
that's
unacceptable.
Right, but that's the
for-
same thing you were saying on Friday, and the same thing the Secretary said publicly, same thing that you said publicly, same thing the White House has said publicly. So, the Chinese already know that. So,
They don't care.
what were the point? What were the point or points of the conversations that have happened since the Secretary spoke to Wang Yi?
Well, part of the point, Matt, was repetition, and repetition can be important, especially when you're dealing with various interlocutors at various levels through various parts of a different government. We wanted the PRC to be under no illusions about the way in which we're treating this, the way we see this, and the implications that it has had not only on the Secretary's travel, but more broadly as well. Again, it was inappropriate. It was irresponsible.
had to unpack all
It
of his
was,
suitcases.
Unacceptable for this sort of thing to happen. We wanted to be very clear with them about that. We did notify the PRC after the fact that this action had taken place on Saturday, that the rest of the world
We blew up your
saw
spy
as
satellite.
well. But again, it should not have come as a complete
Yeah, we
surprise
took
to
it
the
out.
PRC. When Secretary Blinken spoke with Wang Yi on Friday morning, he underscored twice for Wang Yi that the United States would be prepared to take any appropriate action to protect our interests. A similar message was conveyed to the PRC embassy official that Secretary Blinken and Deputy Secretary Sherman met with here on Wednesday when that individual was summoned to the department to discuss this.
Wow.
We are, even as we convey.
Wow. Okay. Somebody was summoned to the White House to discuss that on Wednesday. Did you hear that? All right. We're trying to assess the timeline here. When did Joe Biden order the balloon to be shot, right? This administration has a big problem with timelines. They say they did a bunch of stuff. They say searches are complete. Searches are not complete. They say you got all the classified documents. Guess what? You didn't have all the classified documents. So this story goes on and on about who did what and when. And we all want to know what it looks like and have the chronology detailed for us so we can see it with a fine-tooth comb. In this case, we have questions about when Joe Biden ordered the specific shoot down. He's going to tell us that it happened on Wednesday. But as we just heard from our friend Ned, who went to Harvard, who can't be wrong, he is confirming that they brought Chinese officials to the White House on Wednesday. So the Chinese officials knew at that time that they were prepared to shoot it down. And what it sounds like to me happened is Joe Biden gave the order and he got overruled by everybody else who was there on Wednesday. Let's listen to this.
The embassy official that Secretary Blinken and Deputy Secretary Sherman met with here on Wednesday.
On
when
Wednesday.
That individual was summoned to the department to discuss this.
Okay, so yeah, amazing. So this comes across like Monday, right, into Montana or whenever it crossed. By Wednesday, no, into the Aleutian Islands, I think was on Monday. You follow the timeline regardless. Joe Biden gives the order on Wednesday. They're still meeting with a bunch of their counterparts on Wednesday. They decide not to shoot it down on Wednesday. And it floats around until Saturday.
We are, even as we convey these tough messages in a candid way, we are going to continue to maintain in contact with the PRC. We believe in the importance of these channels of dialogue, precisely so that we can see to
Last
it.
one, but if it's just repetition all the time, are you not at all concerned that the Chinese are going to start to think like you guys think when they repeat their whole Taiwan line at every single meeting they have with you, that it doesn't really do any good just to repeat the same? This is inappropriate, it's inexcusable, it's a violation of international law. Do you not think that it's going to have the same non-impact that their repetition of their talking points on Taiwan have with you?
Matt, we are now, 48 hours from Saturday afternoon. We're 72 hours from Friday. We are talking about this over the course of a few days now. I think to compare this and to try and analogize in that way, it's not only asymmetric, but it's just not an apt analogy.
All right, so that's Ned, and they're still communicating with China. But China now knows that if they fly a spy balloon in, not only is it going to take several days for them to decide what to do, as happened in this case. It came across Alaska on, let's say, a Monday, crossed into the United States, Montana on a Wednesday. It's finally taken out on a Saturday, right? Is able to traverse the entire continental United States in the meantime. The United States paused and waited to summons somebody from the Chinese, their counterparts, into the White House to sit down with them and have a meeting with them. Biden gave the order on a Wednesday, shoot it down. Something happened on Wednesday. It didn't get shot down. So my guess is the meeting happened and Biden lost the debate. Everybody else there decided, no, we're just going to keep this thing going. And then they decided to shoot it down on Saturday, which is just amazing. And so the Chinese now know that, hey, at least they'll get a meeting out of the White House before their balloon gets obliterated. So we'll go through that again. Of course, that's Ned from the State Department. We're sure there's going to be a bunch more from Blinken as we continue to see what China does in response. We'll continue to cover.